In the winter of 1911, Hiram Bingham of Yale University climbed to a stone wall in Peru and found a name written on it in charcoal. The notebook where he copied that name is still at Yale. The name was not his. It read Agustin Lizarraga, and beside it, the year 1902. A Peruvian farmer had crossed the Urubamba River and climbed to this ridge 9 years ahead of him, and had signed the stone. Bingham wrote the sentence down, himself, in his own hand. Agustin Lizarraga is the discoverer of Machu Picchu. He erased it. The wall inside the Temple of the Three Windows was cleaned on his order, for preservation, and the charcoal signature came off the granite. In the story Bingham published, only one man ever found the place. But the photograph survived. This is what he took out of the frame. Machu Picchu sits on a saddle of granite nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, between two peaks, above a hard bend in the Urubamba River. Near the highest ground of the ruins there is a plaza, and on the eastern side of that plaza stands a wall with 3 tall trapezoidal windows cut clean through solid stone. The Inca masons fitted those blocks without mortar. The joints are tight enough that a knife blade will not enter them. The windows are wider at the base than at the top. The trapezoid the Inca used everywhere they built in earthquake country, because a leaning wall does not fall. Bingham called this the Temple of the Three Windows, and the name has stayed. The room faces east, across the sacred plaza. Morning light comes through those 3 openings and lands on the granite of the back wall, and it has done so every clear day for roughly 500 years, and it did so on the morning a Peruvian farmer stood in there with a piece of charcoal in his hand. On the 24th of July, 1911, Bingham stood inside that room. The site was buried. Trees grew out of the agricultural terraces. Vines covered the stonework so completely that the photographs from that first week show green where there should be granite. And on one of the granite blocks in that room, at the height of a standing man, somebody had written a name in charcoal. The charcoal had survived 9 rainy seasons on an exposed Andean ridge. That fact alone tells us where in the room it sat, and how little weather ever reached it. Bingham copied it into the field notebook he was carrying. He photographed it. Then he moved on, and for the next several days his party mapped and cleared and measured, and the name stayed on the wall behind them. Agustin Lizarraga Ruiz was born in the district of Mollepata in 1865. At 18, he left home to avoid conscription into the Peruvian army. He and his brother settled in the Aobamba Valley, west of the ridge, at a moment when coffee and coca leaf moved along the Urubamba by mule train between Quillabamba and Cusco. The brothers built their lives on that road. In time, the Ministry of Transport appointed Agustin a collector, responsible for every bridge on the route from Cusco down to Quillabamba. So the man who signed the temple wall was not a wanderer. He was the person the Peruvian state trusted with the crossings. He worked land for the Ochoa family at the Hacienda Colpani. Neighbors said he could climb places other men would not climb. On the 14th of July, 1902, hunting new ground to plant, he crossed the Urubamba and took 3 men up the slope with him. His cousin Enrique Palma, who administered the hacienda, a laborer named Toribio Richart, and Gabino Sanchez. They spent the day inside the ruins. Building after building came out of the undergrowth. Lizarraga understood what he was standing in. Before he left, he took a piece of charcoal and wrote his surname and the year on a granite block inside the Temple of the Three Windows. He was not filing a claim. He was doing what human beings have always done on old walls. He was saying that he had been there. To understand what happened next, we have to be exact about the word discovery, because the entire argument lives inside it. Machu Picchu was never lost. The anthropologist Amy Cox Hall, whose study of the expedition photographs was published by the University of Texas Press, spent a book demonstrating that the famous Lost City was neither lost nor a city. The official position of the Machu Picchu National Park says the same thing in a single line. The place was never lost because it was occasionally visited and inhabited. What Bingham brought up that slope was a different animal. Yale University funded a scientific commission. He carried a Kodak camera and exposed hundreds of glass plates. He returned the following year with surveyors, engineers, and a geologist. He cleared the vegetation systematically, mapped what emerged, excavated, and then published. The Royal Geographical Society printed him in London. National Geographic gave him an entire issue. That machine is what converts a place into a discovery, not the walking, the publishing. And here sits the contradiction at the center of everything. Bingham's own field notebook records that another man reached the ruins first and calls that man the discoverer in Bingham's handwriting. Bingham then built an international reputation, a Senate seat, and a luxury railway named after him on being the discoverer himself. Both of those facts are true at the same moment, in the same hand, inside the same archive at Yale. The institution was not careless with the ruins. The institution was obsessive about the ruins. It was careless with the name on the wall. Being careless with a name is how names disappear. Bingham did not walk into an empty place. He walked into a farm. When his party reached the ridge in 1911, 2 families were living on the Inca terraces and growing crops on them. The Alvarez family and the Ricart family. Their maize and their sweet potatoes were coming out of soil the Inca had engineered, on terraces the Inca had drained. An Inca irrigation channel was still delivering water to the settlement. The head of one of those households was named Richart. The surname should sound familiar, because a Toribio Richart had climbed up that same slope with Agustin Lizarraga 9 years earlier. The men who signed the temple wall did not simply walk away. At least one of them stayed and put in a crop. And when Bingham reached the terraces and could not find his way through the thicket into the main body of the ruins, it was a boy from that farming family who took him by the hand and led him up into the urban core. The most photographed archaeological site on the American continents was entered on the day of its supposed discovery behind a child who lived there. Melchor Arteaga, the man who ran the tavern down at the river and who guided Bingham up the mountain, had to be paid to make the climb. It was raining. He did not want to go. Every Peruvian in this story treats Machu Picchu as a place, because to them, it was a place. Only the visitor treats it as a revelation. Now we come to the second witness, and the second witness is the reason we can be certain about any of this. In January of 1912, the Peruvian scholar José Gabriel Cosio of the Universidad Nacional de San Antonio Abad del Cusco climbed to the ruins as the Peruvian government's own delegate. Cosio walked into the Temple of the Three Windows, and he read the charcoal on the block. He recorded it, so the inscription was seen and written down by an American at Yale in July of 1911, and independently by a Peruvian academic in January of 1912. 2 men, 2 nations, 2 notebooks, 1 wall. There is no ambiguity about whether the signature existed. There is a photograph of it, and there are 2 separate written records of it, one of them made by the man who would later benefit from its absence. This matters because of what happens to the wall afterward. When a thing is removed, and only one person ever claimed to have seen it, the removal becomes deniable. When a thing is removed, and 2 people on opposite sides of the argument have both written it down, the removal becomes an ACT. Cusco's presence tells us something else. Peru was already watching. The government had already appointed an observer to the expedition. Nobody in Cusco believed Machu Picchu had been discovered by anyone. The word was an export. There is a further thing about Bingham that almost nobody says out loud. He was not looking for Machu Picchu. He did not know it existed. He was looking for something else entirely, and he never found it. Bingham's expedition was hunting Vilcabamba, the last refuge of the Inca after the Spanish invasion, and Vitcos, the fortress of the final rulers. He came out of the mountains, convinced he had found Vilcabamba on that ridge. He said so in print. He said so for the rest of his life. He was wrong. Machu Picchu is not Vilcabamba. In 1964, the explorer Jean Savoy demonstrated that the real Vilcabamba lay far to the northwest at Espiritu Pampa, a site Bingham had actually visited and dismissed as unimportant. The man who is remembered for finding the lost city walked past the lost city, misidentified a different site as the lost city, and became world famous for the mistake. Read that against the notebook line, and the shape of the thing changes. Bingham did not conceal a name because he knew he had found the greatest site in South America. He concealed a name because he needed a discovery, and the only discovery available had somebody else's signature on it. Then he gave the order. At some point after the expedition documented the wall, Hiram Bingham directed that the charcoal inscription in the Temple of the Three Windows be removed. The stated reason was preservation. The block would be cleaned. The site would be restored to its ancient condition. On its own terms, it is a defensible conservation decision, and a modern archaeologist might make the same call about graffiti on a monument. Except that the charcoal was not graffiti. It was evidence. It was the only physical object on that mountain that fixed a date and a name to a visit before 1911. It was the one artifact at Machu Picchu that did not belong to the Inca, and it was the one artifact that contradicted the story about to be sold to the world. Bingham removed it and kept the photograph. It would be dishonest to pretend the man did nothing. Bingham mapped that ridge when nobody else had. He hauled a plate camera up a mountain and produced the photographic record that scholars still work from. He funded, organized, and published, and the reason a farmer in Ohio and a schoolteacher in Manchester know the word Machu Picchu is that Hiram Bingham put it in front of them. The Peruvian government's own delegates were on his expeditions. Cusco cooperated with him. None of that is in dispute. What is in dispute is a single granite block, and the difference between clearing a monument and cleaning a witness. We are not going to tell anyone what to feel about that. We will only observe that of the many thousands of objects Hiram Bingham took off that mountain and shipped to Connecticut, the single item he chose to destroy rather than collect was the one with a Peruvian name on it. The wall is still there. Go and stand in front of it. The granite is clean. The erasure in print took longer, and it is easier to follow because Bingham left the trail himself. In the early books, Lizarraga is present. Bingham names him. He explains that a Peruvian farmer had been at the ruins in 1902 and left an inscription. It is a small paragraph, and it is honest, and it is there. By the final version of the story, the version that sold, the paragraph is gone. The sentence that replaces it puts Bingham alone at the moment of finding, in the first-person singular, with nobody standing on the ridge ahead of him. The farmer, the cousin, the laborer, the third man, the charcoal, the date, the 14th of July, all of it has been lifted out of the book. What remains is a Yale professor cutting through a jungle by himself. Nobody had to lie. Each edition simply carried a little less of Peru in it than the one before. and no reviewer ever asked where the missing paragraph had gone. That is what institutional erasure actually looks like. It is not a conspiracy. It is a series of small editorial decisions, each one defensible on its own, running all in the same direction. And every one of those decisions was made by a man whose own field notebook, sitting in a box at Yale, said the opposite in his own handwriting. Agustin Lizarraga. Never read any of it. On the 11th of February, 1912, 1 month after Jose Gabriel Cosio stood in the Temple of the Three Windows and read the name on the block, Lizarraga drowned. The river that ran below the ridge, the same river he had crossed to reach the ruins 10 years earlier, took him. His body was never recovered. He was 46 years old. The man who first signed Machu Picchu died before the world had ever heard of Machu Picchu. He died before Bingham's issue of National Geographic reached the newsstands. He never sat in a room and heard someone else called the discoverer. He never had to answer for the charcoal, and he never had the chance to defend it. Cosio, the scholar who had verified the inscription weeks earlier, is also the man who wrote down what happened to Lizarraga. The same Peruvian academic documented the signature and the death. He is the thread that holds the entire counter-history together. And outside Peru, almost nobody knows his name either. What Bingham carried down that mountain did not stop at the notebook. The expeditions removed a vast quantity of material from Machu Picchu and shipped it to Yale University. Human remains, ceramics, bronze, stone tools. How much is genuinely disputed? A Yale spokesman put the figure somewhere between 4,000 and 40,000 objects, depending entirely on how a fragment was catalogued. Peru's own National Institute of Culture counted more than 40,000 items and said they were held illegally. In 2008, the Republic of Peru sued Yale University in a United States federal court to get them back. It took 3 shipments across 2011 and 2012 to return the collection, the last of them 127 crates. The objects now sit in the Museo Casa Concha in Cusco, in a research center run jointly by Yale and by the Universidad Nacional de San Antonio Abad del Cusco. That is Cosio's university. A century after, a Peruvian academic from that institution wrote down a name that Yale would erase. That institution shares custody of everything Yale took. Peru has not forgotten the farmer either. In 2002, the former mayor of Cusco, Daniel Estrada, put a motion before the Peruvian Congress asking the nation to formally recognize Lizarraga and his companions as the discoverers of Machu Picchu. In July of 2011, on the centenary of the scientific discovery, the provincial municipality of Cusco awarded Agustin Lizarraga the Centenary Medal, 99 years after he drowned. Go to the Temple of the Three Windows today, and the granite is bare. Nothing is written on it. A guide will tell you about Inca masonry and the trapezoidal openings and the alignment of the plaza, and the guide will be correct about all of it. And nobody will point at the block. Look at what carries his name today. A luxury train runs from Cusco to the foot of the mountain, and it is called the Hiram Bingham. Tourists drink champagne on it while it climbs the valley of the Urubamba, and it crosses the river within sight of the bridge that Agustin Lizarraga was once paid by the Peruvian state to maintain. There is no train named Lizarraga. There is no plaque on the temple wall. For 99 years, there was not even a medal. The name exists in exactly one place now. It exists in a photograph taken in the winter of 1911 on a glass plate by a Yale professor standing inside that room with a Kodak camera. Bingham framed the shot. Bingham pressed the shutter. Bingham developed the plate, printed it, and published it in a book about how he had found the lost city of the Incas. The wall was cleaned on his instruction. The photograph was not. The only surviving image of Agustin Lizarraga's signature on Machu Picchu was made by the man who took it off the wall, and preserved by the institution that spent a century calling him something he told his own notebook he was not. The same ridge holds one more thing that nobody signed for. Scanners went underneath it, and what came back out is the reason Peru is suddenly building an airport at the foot of that mountain. That video is on the screen now.